So you heard that the newest agent in Valorant is a smoke agent version of Reyna. And that piqued your interest because who doesn't want to play Reyna, right? Now you want to play Clove, but you might actually suck at smokes. I will help you fix that. And we'll change your bad smokes into VCT level good smokes. In this video, I'm giving you a full Clove guide for attacking on Ascent, so you can learn to be an effective controller and also to understand your role. Stick to the end of the video because I'm gonna briefly explain also my compendium spreadsheet that you might find useful for other agents as well. Welcome to Lotta's Valorant Laboratory. So when we're gonna start playing on Ascent as a Clove, we first have to understand what role will we have as a player. So if you have experience as a Brimstone, if you have experience as an Omen, you can draw direct comparisons because the range of the smokes is exactly like a Brimstone, but the smokes themselves are working like an Omen smoke because of the same size and almost the same durations, 14.75, so almost 15 seconds, right? But you can really do easy one ways how you could do them with the Omen. But now that you know what are your limitations, you can assume how to play the game. Now, I made a very broad explanation of how I perceive Clove in the compendium. I'm gonna link it below on the description of the video. We're not gonna talk about it right now. You can also find the smokes diagrams here for Ascent and other maps. But I'm gonna explain those concepts at the end of the video. Now we're gonna focus on actual in-game examples. So first, when you play a ranked game, please communicate with your teammates of what's gonna be the plan, because otherwise you're gonna have a really hard time as a controller on attack on Ascent. There are essentially two ways of approaching Ascent attack in ranked games. One is a full execute, right? And you just go A or B, and that's what you want to achieve this round. Second type of approach is defaulting, right? So a slow play, information and gaining, exhausting opponent's resources by putting pressure, and Clove is great for that, by the way. But we're gonna first focus ourselves on doing a full execute on A. So first, what you want to do, communicate with your teammates, communicate with your initiator and duelist to make sure that they are on the same plan. If they want to do an execute on A, you know that you will put your own smokes there, right? So yesterday on Twitter, there was a huge argument, of course, because for 4 years, people are still using this absolute shit of a smoke that you see right here. And this actually made me motivated to record this video again, because this is not changing for the past 4 years. And people are still defending this smoke. So we're going to talk about this right now, because we're going to talk about how to approach and execute on A. So first, most basic execute on A is going to be putting a smoke, of course, over here, right? And a smoke over here. Fortunately for you, Clove is an agent that can drop execute smokes just like Brimstone. You are able to drop the smokes, run in, because it's 2 clicks, right? From one menu. It's not an Omen that has to do one smoke and then another smoke, and he's late a little bit, right? So when we drop those smokes right here on A, you want to achieve a flush line with the cover, right? So when you do those smokes, as you can see, this should be your default smoke. So it's very hard to retake or peek out of those positions. You don't want them leaking. This is incredibly important, and many people do those mistakes. They are lazy or, I don't know, messy, and they do smokes like this. So if you see your controller doing smokes like this, you know it's gonna be a hard game, because now if your opponents are smart, they're gonna abuse the space that the smoke creates, because now they can kill the player that is on switch, maybe peek out with a flash and just absolutely abuse you. The same happens over here. Now, let's talk about this smoke. Why this smoke over here is important to be in this position, right? Instead of this position right here. So if a player playing on Heaven has a Phantom, the most basic example is he's just gonna ping this location over here and spam you with a Phantom, and you're just gonna get insane damage or even die and get punished just because your opponent has a gun with a suppressor. That's one of the first examples that many people just completely forget about. And also remember, maybe your opponents have a Sova, so when someone is standing in the smoke that you did like this, and then a Sova arrow lands backside, reveals 3 players, and the guy with Phantom just gets 3 kills, right? So you get absolutely fucked. Now, when we think about that, that's only one example. But why is it so important to not make this smoke at all, like this way? Because the player, like, the thing about it this way, the smokes are always the same shape, right? So a player peeking out of here can check dice for free, can check the bricks, can go into A main and check like all of those angles, essentially like retaking. It's not a perfect smoke for retaking. We're going to talk about that on the defense side. But when a smoke like this is applied, you have the capability of just creating yourself at advantages with angles, which then attackers have a hard time punishing, because the player can already be out behind the smoke and check those positions over here without this player seeing him, right? That's not going to happen when the smoke is going to be placed correctly behind the wall, because then the player who peeks out, he's already exposed. Like you're seeing here, the player from main will see you because you peek out. The angle is good for the player who is in a main right here or peeks out of a main and looks in this direction. This is so important to understand, because if you do a smoke like this, I would rather have you not use a smoke at all. So this also brings me to another point. If you have just one smoke as a clove, just use this smoke over here. This is the more important one. This is the one that denies the first angle that will see you when you try to go into the site from tree, and it's very hard angle for you to also clear, right? And yeah, hopefully that can be taught to a lot of players in ranked, but it's like so important to understand. Now, if you want to, that also two approaches to min-max this smoke on heaven A into either being a little bit of a one-way or making it a better angle for the attackers. So one, if you want to have a little bit of a better angle as an attacker, you're moving this smoke a little bit more to the north, right? Like this. Whoops, my bad. So like with the letter A, you put it like this. So the angle over here is still sharp because you didn't move it into this direction. You know what I mean? Like if I do the smoke like this, it creates a small one-way for a person in Jenny. So someone who's like backs off, he's gonna be in a one-way accidentally. Sometimes gonna get killed because of that. It even works better with Astra, who has bigger smokes. But then it creates a small pocket right here. So there's like a downside for that, right? So depending what you want to achieve, a more safe smoke is putting it like deeper like this, right? On the letter A, as you can see here. So the again, I didn't activate it. So when you put it on the letter A over here, it creates a very small angle that a player cannot hide in, right? And if it goes close to the wall, then he's even more visible because of how angles work. Like you're peeking left side close to the wall, that allows the opponents to see you first, right? But if you do the one way for Jenny like this, then you create a small pocket for this player to peek out here and still check the dice for free, right? So just pay attention to that. That's another thing. But what else can you do during a full execute on A if you only have one smoke? And that's something that you will typically not see in ranked. Many people will get mad about it, but it's actually something that you should consider a lot. If you only have one smoke, you can either, again, smoke tree, or you can achieve similar results by smoking like this. So you can be a little bit more creative. What does a smoke like this achieve? Is when you smoke this, you cover yourself from tree, but you enable yourself to check angles while not being exposed to Jenny. So you're limiting the amount of angles that you have to check at once, right? And because of that, you're able to flood into this side while not being fully exposed. Now you can also put those smokes a little bit further up, right? This is a very good smoke to just deny informations for, deny the angles for the operators. Like you can, depending on if you have flashes or not, you can work with the flashes then outside of the, to come out of the smoke. Smokes like this are also great because now we can go into the smoke, spray this in the corner, maybe peek out of the corner, not be like, you know, punished again from Jenny. If you peek out over here, you can check this angle without being exposed to dice and the right side hand. But again, those are the smokes that you need to communicate with the teammates that you're doing like that, right? And the reason why you also want to do some smokes like this is because typically defenders will gonna do a smoke like this, right? This is the defender smoke, and then you have to solve this problem. Like, what do I do here, right? So if you have a smoke that extends it, essentially you're nullifying the effect of the defender's smoke, right? Because now you can literally float out of the smoke. And as a defender, this is incredibly hard to like hold because there are so many angles that you're gonna go through. So imagine being a defender right here, right? And you have to be ready to hold this, 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 this. And imagine if there's a flash coming out of that smoke, like you're completely wrecked, right? So smokes like this are very important to understand how to work with them. So I don't typically expect your ranked teammates to understand that, but you can try communicating that and explaining them. I wouldn't mind using 2 smokes in this way, for example.
Dropping smokes.
Like creating pressure like this actually is incredibly fun to play as well, because now you can peek out of this position to check like all of the right hand angles. You can peek out of this position to literally just isolate Jenny, and you're not exposed to heaven because the player from heaven cannot see you. All right, let's do it again.
Dropping smokes.
You're able to check right, not be exposed. You're able to go left, check Jenny, not be exposed, right? Like you're not visible from heaven, you're not visible from dice, but you have a free Jenny check and a free switch check. Like this, those are really underrated smokes that not many people will do, or not any people will do, but it will allow you to be very flexible while doing executes, right? So think about it that way. Of course, you have to understand that someone has to also check the right side. What is also very important to understand when playing Clove is that you can still smoke after you're dead, right? So let's assume that we did a full execute on A, we did the most standard smokes, the good smokes, right? We did it like this, we're going on site, and then we're dead. But we managed to plant the spike, and now we're in post-plant position. So now you have to think about, how do I change my smokes for post-plant? And that is where it's getting fun, because you have a lot of options. Still, one of the best ones will just be smoking like your execute. This is still very good. It literally just stops the opponents from doing a effective retake, right? But when you're planting, for example, for Jenny, a very good smoke is when your opponents are already on site. You can just do a one-way in the middle of it. Or sorry, not in the middle of it. You can do a one-way when you put it on the, essentially on the first half of the Jenny. Now the person defusing it cannot really see anything while defusing, and that essentially is like a post-plant molly, right? If you do something like this, it just literally stops people from defusing for 15 seconds. It's so hard to do anything when you have a situation like this, right? So pay attention to that with the amount of smokes you have in the post-plant, right? So remember, it's 30 seconds, right? It's 30 seconds to get it back. So if you get onto the site, you use both smokes during the execute, it will literally take around 20 seconds. So 10 seconds after the initial execute, you're gonna have already one smoke. Be effective with them. Clove is incredibly powerful when she can utilize a huge amount of smokes, right? So that's the thing that you have to think about. Now, when you also do, what you can also do is, for example, you can do smokes that create an incredible amount of pressure on players in hell. If players are jumping down and checking hell, this is very rare occasion, but I just want to show you, this is going to be more effective while retaking, but in post-plant is also pretty good. If you put just a smoke on heaven like this, you create a one-way like this, and now it's incredibly hard for players that are in hell, right? But important to leave this space over here so they just cannot sneak out on, like without knowing. Right? It all depends on the context. This is why playing smokes is so creative and fun, specifically in post plants. Right? You can also do one ways on this box. If you put it close to the wall, you have to pay attention to not be too close to the smoke, because then it might be actually not a very good one way. When you do it this way, actually, it works correctly. Okay, never mind. So sometimes it just reach the bottom of the ground, right? But there's another one way in post plant. So if you plant it here, it's a good opportunity to have the spams, right? And remember also, Clove has a very specific mechanic that I think is currently bugged. But when you smoke someone like this, right? He will be covered in smoke first, then someone who is looking at him. So once you're dead and you can focus a little bit more on the smokes, what you can literally do is you can smoke someone off and he's still going to be visible for like a fraction of a second before that smoke fully affects him. But the player in the smoke is actually not going to see a little bit earlier. So you can kill him. It's like essentially like a mini blind that you can do. But again, not always useful because it depends when you put the smoke on, right? But it's also very important to understand which smokes are being done first. This is not applicable to Clove because this is what does numbers 1 and 2, 1 and 2, right? Because Clove can drop the smokes at the same time. This is more for Astra and Omen. But when you do executes or A and B, you always do them in this particular order if you go from choke points, right? So if you go for A main, if you go for B main, your first smoke should always be the one that is numbered 1 because that's the first angle that opponents will see from, right? So it's very important to understand that. Now let's swap to the B side and we're going to do an execute. Now, again, same idea with the smokes as on A. Your smokes don't want to be leaking. They want to be flushed with the wall, so it's very hard to peek out of them. Those are clean smokes. Those are very hard smokes to breach and peek out of them. You're getting insta-punished if you do that. If someone sees a smoke like this, they're typically afraid of pushing out of them. But if you are lazy, you're messy, you're just not clean with your smokes are gonna maybe look like something like this. And now you might get wrecked because this gives space for a player to look at lane, for example, right? And not be exposed from main. If you do it even worse, then holy shit, you're gonna get punished even worse. Those are the smokes that I see at Immortal 3 level, by the way. And now the player from market is like, oh, okay, thanks. I'm just gonna go out, walk out here and then just try to get kills and hide inside of the smoke. Maybe go back into market. Oh, but someone in chat will be right now, but he can get spammed. That doesn't matter. What matters is that the person that is outside of the smoke has an opportunity to strike first. You're not gonna just spam the smoke when you don't know if someone is there. So the first strike goes to the opponent, right? The same applies to the smoke on A. If you do the smoke over here, like many people actually use the argument that a player that is inside of the smoke is easier to kill because he's not behind the wall. The point is, you don't want the player to be in this position because you need to get to side and not be fully exposed, right? And you don't want to be punished by potentially a player getting lucky and getting the advantage of that smoke. So always remember that. Your smokes should be clean and you should be very effective at putting them, which is pretty easy with Clove because, you know, it's hard to miss those, right? But even when you have one smoke, you can still push B side pretty effectively. It's the easiest as Astra, but it's pretty easy as Clove and Omen as well. So you're gonna use one smoke to connect the lane with the B main. It's very simple as you can do it this way. Look, this is an interesting smoke that you can just sneak into lane while not being exposed to anything, right? As you can see. So typically when you do a smoke like this, you can still go into market and like check the market. It's very like multi-purpose smoke because one, you isolate the stairs so you can peek out here and you can isolate the CT and the stairs from killing you. So you have a free check for those angles over here. Then you can swing into CT while not being exposed to stairs, right? So you get a little bit of a time while your teammates can just go lane, for example, right? Or you can go lane, right? And you can just sneak in here and go into side. Or even not sneak, just full run, right? If someone is standing here in this position, you can typically also punish the player that wants to spam into this smoke because he's typically like swinging out because he's expecting the smoke to be here or something, right? And then you can still punish that person. And even if that person is spamming through that smoke, he's not guaranteed to get kills and you have a free entrance towards the B side, right? Again, you're not gonna see a lot of those smokes on ranked because not many people actually think about smokes like that, right? But if you're not sneaking by like this, right, you can just be very effective on jumping like this, right? And remember, when you do a smoke like this, wait for the opponent to just shoot through a few bullets from it because people are spamming smokes like that, but that's fine. They have no informations. They spam it, you create pressure. Maybe you crossed, maybe you didn't. Opponents don't know, right? So that's very important to understand when you do that. Otherwise, B is pretty clear, right? But when it comes to post plant, oh wait, I didn't pick up the spike. When it comes to post plant, you can be also pretty creative. So now let's speak about post plant. It doesn't matter if you're alive or dead, because you're still gonna have smokes to play on the B side if you were with your team during the execute. Now, if your opponents are still in CT, what are the best smokes that you can do is actually drop a one-way on CT. Now, the problem with this smoke is that it sometimes doesn't work, but we know why it doesn't work. So it's easily fixable if you know that, right? So you need to put the smoke on the top of the barrel and not on the wall. On the wall, it doesn't work. Your crosser, like when you put it on the wall, is gonna get moved. When you click it right now, pick, it's being put below. Did you see the small dot that was there? Look. See how it moved? So you don't want to put it in that position. You want to put it behind the wall in the corner of this, like this. And now pay attention to the barrel, how a small dot appears.
No peeking.
And that ball creates a one-way now, which is very hard to breach by your opponents, because you can easily see them and pre-fire them. Now, if the opponents are already out of market, already flooding in, you have other options as well. One, the very simple smoke to stop the players from stairs is to put a smoke on stairs. Now, in my opinion, you don't want the smoke to be too close to site. Like this would be like a perfect smoke, but I don't think that's good. You want to put it a little bit back like this, so the players who are on stairs are gonna be very anxious when peeking out, but they're also not already on site to go into cover or on the left side. So you want to still like kind of punish them when they're on the stairs, when they're peeking out in the unknown, right? And they are still in this small area over here. So it's easier for you to hold this angle, oops, when they are here, right? If the smoke is lower, like this, then the player from stairs can literally be behind this cover without you knowing. Right, so that's very important to understand. Now, also you can do a one-way on this box when you're playing from the backside, like this. And the opposing players from stairs are not gonna see you when you're holding this position, but you have to be aware that you might actually get spammed for that. But, well, you can spam back if you have a phantom. I strongly recommend trying out the smoke when you're a phantom player and you can spam for smokes, right? This is like really good. Like if maybe you get an information from someone else that someone's already on stairs, you can start spamming this. No one can come down without you seeing him first. So that's pretty neat. And also if the Vandal players are spraying for the smoke, well, they can easily just literally see the traces and try to kill them when you do that. Now, another one-way smoke that you can do is on the middle of the boxes over here. This one is also a little bit risky and is only usable from one position, and that will be this one. When you're holding like this, you're gonna be seeing your opponents first, but at the same time, if your opponents will learn that you always stand in that one particular corner, they might actually just kill you every single time. So use this with caution. I would use it just once per game if I would be standing in the backside of B, unless your opponents are literally the dumbest ducks and you can just abuse that. But yeah, otherwise, smokes on a lane, pretty standard. You have the same logic like on Heaven on A when I was talking about the smoke. You don't want the smoke to leak out like this, because then the people will just run out of lane. You want the smoke to be hidden behind the wall like this. So now they have a hard time peeking out without being held by players that might be even here, right? Let's the smoke disappear. And now you can see an easy way of holding an angle, good crosser placement that is not being distracted by anything. From this position, you also have a good hold. You can even put it a little bit more back if you're holding from the position that I'm standing at, because then you're able to see them a little bit earlier, right? And this player still can help you with this kind of smoke. So be aware though, as you can see, if your teammate stands in this position, you can consider moving the smoke a little bit more to the right, but then it creates a pocket over here, right? So if you don't want to cover your teammate that is standing in the corner on the box, if you do a smoke like this, it will leave a little bit of a disadvantage here if you mess it up, right? And the player can peek out of this corner without being exposed. So yeah, that's about it when it comes to the B side. Before we start talking about defaulting and lurking as a Clove, I would just want for you to visualize how big is the range of your smokes when you're alive and when you're dead, because there's a difference. Now pay attention here. As you can see, you're gonna have the range. If you're standing in this particular spot, you're gonna have the range to smoke still the one way that we just spoke about, right? And you can still affect the Heaven A as well. But if we die over here, the smokes are gonna have much shorter range. As you can see, you're gonna have it very limited. You cannot reach side B anymore, right? You can still reach CT though, which is good. You can still reach Heaven A, and of course the smokes on tree and so on. But this smoke range is much more limited. As you can see on the minimap, you have also a purple circle that shows you what is currently the range of the smokes. What is very important as well, for someone who is not playing Clove, but you want to know what's going on, this minimap, like circle, is visible to your teammates when you have smokes that you can throw. When you don't have smokes, that circle will disappear. But when you have smokes, that circle is active on the minimap. So this also gives the information to your teammates so they know that you have a smoke. I mean, no one knows this in ranked, but at least if you know, maybe then you can ask your Clove for the smokes without asking them first, if they have a smoke active, right? The second approach to playing Ascent on attack is gonna be defaulting, right? If you don't know what is defaulting, I will also link that video to you so you can learn a little bit. But in general, when defaulting, you want to enable control on every single lane like B main,
Here.
mid,
Right here.
A main,
here.
and short. You're gonna designate one player to each of those lanes, and then one flex player is gonna work with another one of those players to gain a little bit of control and create pressure. I mean, in general, every single player wants to activate a little bit of pressure from this side, so maybe that will trigger the defenders from to use some utility and not have that utility when you're actually gonna execute. But as a Clove player or as an Omen player, it's very important to understand now that if you play default, you're gonna have to be min-maxing your smokes from the beginning of the game. From the beginning of the round, you should be using a smoke, and you should have a plan already before the round starts on what will you smoke, because you're gonna get your smokes back. So you're gonna have them ready for the second wave. This is the approach of defaulting. Like, you are aware that you're not gonna push aside fast, so you can be effective with your smokes. So I have a small diagram that I showed on my compendium that is showing the default positions of like the pressure smokes. I like calling them pressure smokes or like attacking smokes, right? Because they will make the players behind them feel uneasy, right? All of those smokes will achieve that. So if I play mid, for example, I like just dropping, if I know I play in default, I just like dropping 2 smokes like this.
Dropping smokes.
This enables you to control mid, create pressure, make the players from market uneasy with holding anything, right? The same goes for short. The players in short are like, oh, I don't want to stand here anymore, right? And the players from market cannot really risk it as well, because if the smoke is like leaking so much into here, like they don't even know if someone went to the right side, so they have to be like a little bit more aware of that. They can be, but if they check right side, they can be peeked from the left side, and that creates a lot of pressure. So that typically smokes like this will trigger the Sova from market to actually use the drone, check mid, or maybe if there's a sky, she will check it with a flash or go with the target, and that will achieve its job. Spending 30 seconds to use using 2 smokes to spend 30 seconds to just wait for another smoke to go back into your pocket, it's fine if you're getting map control alongside it, right? Or you essentially put your opponents into position to sacrifice utility that is not rechargeable, right? That is very important to understand. Using double smokes, of course, is not always a good possibility, but always use at least one. Right, so if I'm playing from mid link, I'm always either smoking bottom mid as a 1 smoke, or I'm smoking short and then working towards like bottom mid with a gun, because now I know that I should be safe from the player on short. Also, pay attention when you're doing a smoke for short, because if you do that smoke for short, you can essentially blind a player. This is a fun mechanic that I can use with every single smoke. If someone is standing in this corner, right, you can essentially blind them. Because, wait, I don't see anything. If you put the edge of the smoke on that position, like this. This should be
No
fine.
peeking.
The player who's standing here is blinded, as you can see. So you cannot literally stand in that position. And you can like bait them into going into it. You can be a little bit more effective. We can make the smoke a little bit like this even.
Drop in a smoke.
Ah, that's exactly the same. Wait, we're gonna fix it.
No peeking.
Like this. Now the player knows there's a box here, but he cannot stand next to the box because he's blinded, right? So that's just one of those things, that small things that you can learn while playing smokes, and you can get effective because of that. You can essentially create a one-way as well if you're gonna put it even like this, more precise position like this. I'm gonna leave a small gap over here. Wait.
Drop in a smoke.
All right. So the player goes here. He's fully blinded, but he's gonna be visible because there's a gap here. All right. So small things. But also, when you want to create pressure not on mid, you can still create smokes that are interesting for the B, right? And that's something that I spoke about with the one smoke that you can use just for creating pressure. You can just do this smoke, right? Which essentially makes the players from B side uneasy. This is especially effective if there's no killjoy, for example, here. Or you can isolate the killjoy turret and just destroy it and then put that smoke, and it's very, very anxiety inducing for the defenders. You can also just do, when the round starts, this smoke as well, and now the players from B have to be aware that someone can sneak onto lane while working on mid. You can be in the mid position right here on B link, but you use this smoke and that creates some pressure without you even being there. That's one of the things that you need to think about when playing controllers with rechargeable smokes. You want to create that pressure on locations that you might not even be at, right? If I go, for example, into top mid or A main, right, I can work with smokes like this, for example. If I know we're playing default, of course. Remember, we're talking about defaulting. I will smoke bottom mid, and I will smoke, for example, A main, like this. This is especially effective if one of my other players is an A main lobby. For example, I have a KO or a Sova, anyone with any piece of utility that can gather informations. If I do smokes like this, and the Sova will use an arrow to clear A main, we push away the players from A main over here, right? Because you cannot stand over here. So that player has to go back into the smoke and either stay in the smoke or fall back to the side, which is your job is done. You created pressure, and the player from A main, like a Sova who used the arrow here, can now either take this space and hold it, right? Or fake a push. And because of that, players from A side might actually use utility towards the smoke that are created, while you're still being in top mid and you just use two smokes. We're gonna do them again.
Dropping smoke.
So you use smokes like this, and you can work towards short because you smoked bottom mid. So you can work towards short yourself and essentially create a little bit of pressure here by checking, using the grenade. Remember, the grenade is very specific. We're gonna talk a little bit about it. Actually, we can talk about it right now. The grenade explodes after 2 seconds. You cannot do lineups with it. It minus 90 DK, right? There's two ways of using it. Either you bounce it from walls. It can bounce twice if there's a wall close enough. But if you stick it to the ground, it explodes at the same time as it typically would be, right? So it's still full timer, but it doesn't bounce. So you can be more precise with it. And it doesn't go for the walls, right? So you can still create pressure with this. It's a great tool for creating pressure, but it's very awkward to use because you cannot do lineups with it, right? So just remember about that. But one of my also favorite things when I start top mid, right? Let's assume I started top mid. I use one smoke. I use the smoke on mid bottom, like this. I work towards short, of course, not fully running, not announcing my position, right? But if I do like pressure like this, I use the grenade over here to either affect the minus 90 on the players over here or here, right? I push them away if they were standing in this position. If they are in this position, I can still check it. But now, this smoke, when it's still being active over here, you can supplement with another smoke. Because typically, when you smoke like this, no one will be standing in bottom mid. But now you can also put the second smoke over here, and you can try to get into this location on bottom mid with this smoke, right? Because now you're not exposed to market, and you can work clearing bottom mid with either with solo utility or with any utility from your teammates. So think about it this way: when playing defaulting, you have to be very effective with your smokes. You should never have a situation when you're playing slow default on attack ascent and you didn't use your smoke in the first seconds, or you didn't use your smokes at all in the first 30 seconds. Like 30 seconds is how much will it take, how long will it take for you to get one smoke back. If you didn't use it during that time, that means that you're not effective, you didn't do your job, right? That's like Sova not using an arrow, Breach not using an arrow in a slow default to gather informations, create pressure, push away opponents, and make them scared, and maybe use utility as a counter attack. Now let's start the talk a little bit about lurking. Ascent is a very basic map, and lurking on this map is not easy because of how many choke points you have and how easy it is to control those choke points. And also now another problem with Clove is the fact that you have a very limited range. But you can be effective after you're dead. But the thing is, you don't want to be dead when you're lurking, because your job as a lurker, and many people have this misconception of this, your job as a lurker is not to get like a first blood and like be very effective and quick with lurking. What you have to be effective at when lurking, you need to be patient. Your job is to have informations about rotations and convey those informations to your teammates. So when I'm playing bottom mid, for example, like this, and I hear players from market rotating towards A because my teammates are doing an execute towards A, right? And I can still help them with smokes from this range. Maybe not super effective, but at least I can do this smoke and do a smoke like this. It's not super good, but at least I'm able to help somehow, right? But now my job is not to just peek mid and die or get the 50-50 with the player who's rotating. My job is to create space. My job is to take that space when I hear the rotation coming from market, get the information from my teammates that one is rotating towards the spawn, and when can they expect them, right? So you can also lurk if your teammates are not creating pressure. So if your teammates, you see them not being on site, like let's assume we do a 1-4 split, like I'm alone on mid and there are 4 players coming from main. If my teammates are still stuck in main, I cannot lurk. It's impossible to lurk, because if the opponents do know that the teammates, the attackers are not on site, they didn't do an execute yet, then the players from B and mid should not be rotating. I say should, but it's ranked, so you never know. But the point is that I'm making is like typically your opponents will not move till you actually breach this line, this line, this line. Those are the points where if those are broken by the attackers, it will trigger a rotation. When that happens, you have to be even more patient, unless you have certainty that you have a full advantage in a gunfight, because you can maybe get a peek on a player who's rotating with a knife out from it. It happens at a mortal level. I don't know, but it happens. That's another skill that you probably should also learn, is to make sure that you know the difference in speed of the footsteps between someone who is rotating with a gun and someone who is rotating with a knife. When you know that, then that will enable you to understand what can be the advantages when you peek a player, right? When you listen and you hear that someone is running with a knife, that is probably a good moment to just swing and kill him, right? But yeah, so let's assume our teammates made the execute, they're on site, some of them are dead, some of the defenders are dead, and now the rotation happens. When the rotation happens from market, I hear the footsteps, I wait for the player to be probably around here, and now I go slowly behind them, right? My smokes are on cooldown, so I don't have the ability to use anything yet, and I should only focus on my movement and like taking this space while also communicating. And because typically there's one player here, one player here, when this player rotates for spawn, I expect the second player to come for B into B spawn. Because of that, I'm gonna be more patient. I'm gonna be probably looking into this direction just in case the player from B main is gonna go into market. But if he goes through CT, he's gonna make noise. He's not gonna rotate silently. So I'm gonna know if the second player from B, the anchor, is gonna start rotating for spawn. Then I can swap my crosser placement towards the spawn and wait for him to be close, and then just swing or let him go and go after them and backstab them when my teammates, if my teammates are still alive. Now, very important about very important about lurking is if you will be dead before the opponents are playing retake, you fail at your job at lurking. Because another point of an effective lurk is that you're gonna be backstabbing the opponents when they're starting doing the retake. So when the players from heaven are gonna be going to site to retake the side with the spike, that's the moment for you to be alive, to create pressure. Sometimes not even getting a kill. Sometimes it's even like starting to shoot at someone and then hiding. Because if you're still gonna stay alive, I just saw someone here. I shot at him, I hit him like for 2 bullets or 1, and I don't peek. Now I'm just playing safe, playing time, because now the players who are doing retake are torn apart. From one side, they have to go to A side. From the other side, they have to clear me. And if they don't clear me, because I'm hiding and I'm playing like safe and effective, that buys us time in the post plant, which brings us closer to the spike explosion. So always have that in your mind. When you're lurking, your main job is to convey informations, stay alive, only take gunfights that you are certain that are gonna be like 80-20 for you, because you know you're gonna shoot someone in the back, or you're gonna shoot someone who is with a knife out because you understand the footstep speed sound. Now, still, unfortunate problem with lurking on Clove is that if your teammates are going A, you need to be mid. If your teammates are going B, you need to be mid. You cannot be lurking from B main, for example, right? If your opponents are going A, because you don't have the range of the smokes. And if you're gonna die on B main, you're not gonna have the post plant smokes as well for A. But if you die somewhere in mid as a lurker, at least there's gonna be some benefit to your death, because you're still gonna be able to... Oh, I didn't turn it off. You're still gonna be able to use your smokes to help in post plants for both sides, which limits your potential lurks. Which limits your potential lurks, but at least will be able to utilize some of the smokes in post plant. I want to visualize what I'm saying right here, so I'm just gonna kill myself over here, right? And now when I have the spike range, I can still help in post plant by doing those smokes, or I can do the one way for Jenny as well, as you can see over here, right?
Drop in a smoke.
And for the B side, I can do the one way for CT. I can do the smoke for stairs and for lane as well, right? But because of that, my position is gonna be very limited and pretty obvious for the opponents. So you have to be clever about the amount of times you want to lurk from it or hold this angle. If you get predictable, you might get punished. But it's still, even if you get punished, at least you will have some use because of your smokes that you can still use during the post plant for both A and B. But again, you're not very flexible as a lurker, as a Clove, so typically you would like to go with your team and leave the lurking for example, a Cypher, right? Or if you have double controllers, something like that happens, you leave that job to the auto controller, like for example Viper, or the Omen. And in general, from all the controllers, the worst lurker is Brimstone, the second worst is Clove, and then the other 3, so we have Astra, Omen, and Viper, are the typically designated players who are gonna be lurking and taking map control because of the way that their utility works with longer range. Before we're gonna also end, I just wanted to explain to you the compendium, when you can see how I explained what are the roles of Clove. Clove, in my mind, is all of what I explained. I just put it into simple words over here so you can just kind of visualize it as well. The fluid complexity is something that I judge every agent when it comes to how easy is it to pick up an agent, right? So we have the floor of it. It's very easy to understand because half of your utility is not even active. Like, think about it this way. You have 4 pieces of utility, but your one is active only when you get a kill. The other one is active only when you're dead. So you can't even use half of your kit unless one of that happens. So the floor of the utility is very simple, and that means that they are being easy to use. The grenade is very simple to use, so the floor complexity is very low. The ceiling of the complexity, when you compare it to other controllers, is also very low, because you don't really have a lot of things that you can be creative about unless it's the smoke. But you can't even one way like Viper, you can't one way like Omen, and the complexity from Brimstone comes from him using his ultimate and mollies for either zoning or map control or post-plant util. So Clove is pretty easy to pick up. Now, when it comes to her primary role, as you can see, execute, support essentially, right? Secondary smoker, and recurring because she has it on a cooldown. And then we have secondary role, the pressure utility that I explained when we're defaulting, for example. Help in post-plant does the tier 3 role, and then the attack order, so the order in which you should go onto the site. Secondary entry, because you want to trade someone, get the buff from your pick-me-up ability to get the heal and the movement ability. And then the support is essentially what means is you go like third or fourth with your grenade and you just try to trade players, right? Lurking potential, again, depends on future in the map. We're talking about Ascent here, but as you can see, she's not the best at lurking when you compare it to the other controllers. And defense, we're going to explain that. We're going to be doing the defense video. Again, I'm going to link this. I'm going to link this video, sorry, this document in the description of the video. I hope you guys find this helpful. Thank you for watching.